A woman who had every reason to walk away and chose to stay. A woman nobody expected anything from, a foreigner, a widow, an outsider, and yet, somehow, God chose her to be part of the most important family line in all of human history. This is the story of Ruth. And I promise you, by the time we get to the end of this video, you're going to see your own life differently. Because Ruth's story isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror. And what it shows us about loyalty, about God's timing, and about how He can flip your whole life around when you least expect it, it's nothing short of breathtaking. Let's go back, way back, about 3,000 years ago. Imagine living in a land where there's no food. Not like, oh, we're out of groceries kind of no food. I mean nothing. Fields dry and cracked, animals dying, children crying with empty stomachs. That's the kind of famine that hit the land of Judah, specifically a little town called Bethlehem. Now, here's something kind of ironic and a little heartbreaking. Bethlehem literally means house of bread. Can you imagine? The town literally named House of Bread had no bread. So a man named Elimelech made a desperate decision. He packed up his wife Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and left everything they'd ever known. Their home, their community, their identity, everything. They crossed the Jordan River and headed into a foreign land called Moab. Now, I need you to understand, this was a big deal. Moab wasn't just a neighboring country. The Moabites and Israelites had a complicated, painful history. They were technically distant relatives, both descended from Abraham's family, but the Moabites had refused to help Israel during one of their darkest moments. There was real tension there, real history, real prejudice on both sides. But when you're starving, you go where there's food. Pride becomes a luxury you can no longer afford. So this little Hebrew family, refugees really, settled in Moab and tried to build a new life. And for a while, it actually worked. Mahlon and Chilion grew up, fell in love, and married two Moabite women. One married a girl named Orpah. The other married a young woman named Ruth. For 10 years, life was good. They had a home, they had family dinners, they had laughter. Naomi had daughters-in-law who called her mom. She watched her boys become men. Life felt settled. But then everything fell apart. First, Elimelech died. Just like that. The man of the house, gone. Naomi became a widow in a foreign country, but she still had her sons. They'd take care of her. She told herself she'd be okay. But then both of her sons died too. There's a pause. The Bible doesn't explain how. It doesn't give us a disease or an accident or a cause. It just says they died. And honestly, I think that's intentional, because grief doesn't always come with an explanation. Sometimes life just takes people from you, and you're left standing there asking why with no good answer. So now you have three women, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, all widows, all in a foreign land, all with no income, no sons, no husbands, and no safety net. In that ancient world, a woman without a husband or son to protect her was in serious trouble. We're talking poverty. We're talking danger. We're talking the kind of vulnerability that could swallow you whole. This is where our story really begins. Naomi got word from home. The famine in Judah was over. There was food in Bethlehem again. God had come through for his people. So Naomi made her decision. She was going home. She'd left as a wife and mother. She'd be returning as a widow with nothing, but at least Bethlehem was her people, her land, her God. She kissed Ruth and Orpah goodbye and told them, "Go back to your mothers, go back to your families. You're young, you're beautiful, you deserve a chance to start over, find new husbands, have children, build a life. You've been good to my sons. You've been good to me. Now go, be free." Can you imagine that? This woman had just lost her husband and both her sons. The only family she had left were these two young women, and she was sending them away because she loved them so much she wanted better for them than what she could offer. Both Ruth and Orpah started crying. They said, "No, we're coming with you." But Naomi kept insisting. She said something so honest, it hurts. "I have nothing to give you. I have no more sons for you to marry. I can't fix this. I can't rescue you. Even if I got married tonight, and I'm not, you'd have to wait decades for children to grow up. No, go home. I'm bitter. God's hand has turned against me. You don't want to be part of this story." That last part, God's hand has turned against me, that's a woman who has been crushed. That's not just sadness. That's the kind of grief that shakes your faith. The kind where you start wondering if God even sees you or if he's forgotten you entirely. Orpah, crying, kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and walked back toward Moab. And I don't want you to judge Orpah. Please don't. She made the sensible choice, the smart choice. She was going home to her family, where she belonged, where she could rebuild. That's not wrong. That's wisdom. But Ruth didn't move. Naomi looked at her and said, "Look, your sister-in-law went back to her people and her gods. Go with her." One last push, one final out. And this is the moment. This is the moment that everything turns on. Because Ruth opened her mouth and said something so powerful, so raw, so real, that people are still quoting it 3,000 years later. "Don't ask me to leave you. Don't tell me to go back, because wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die. And I want to be buried right there beside you. I'm making a vow before God right now. Not even death is going to separate me from you." Y'all, she didn't have to do this. She had nothing to gain from following Naomi. No promise of money, no promise of a new husband, no promise of comfort. She was choosing uncertainty. She was choosing hardship. She was choosing to leave her homeland, her family, her culture, her gods, and follow an old, broken, bitter woman into a land that might not even want her. But she did it anyway. Because that's what love looks like when it's real. When Naomi heard those words, she stopped arguing. Some things are bigger than logic. Some things you just have to accept with tears and silence. So together, the two women walked, just the two of them, all the way to Bethlehem. When Naomi and Ruth walked into Bethlehem, word spread fast. It was like a small town, and a small town always has eyes. Women came out and said, "Wait, is that Naomi?" And Naomi, who hadn't lost her sharp tongue even in grief, said, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara." Naomi means pleasant. Mara means bitter. She said, "I went away full. I'm coming back empty. God did this to me." Standing right next to her was Ruth. Ruth, who had given up everything for her. And Naomi called herself empty. Grief is like that sometimes. It blinds you to the gifts standing right in front of you. But the timing of their arrival was not an accident. They rolled into Bethlehem just as the barley harvest was beginning. And in Israel, the harvest season was the one time when poor people, widows, foreigners, the homeless, had a legal right to walk behind the harvesters and pick up whatever grain fell on the ground. It was called Gleaning. It was basically God's built-in welfare system, written right into the law. Ruth woke up the next morning, looked at Naomi, and said, "Let me go out to the fields and glean. Somebody will be kind enough to let me work." She didn't sit around feeling sorry for herself. She didn't wait for someone to rescue her. She got up and went to work. That alone tells you everything about who Ruth was. Now here's where the story starts getting good. Ruth went out to find a field, and as it happened, she ended up in a field that belonged to a man named Boaz. As it happened. That's the Bible's way of winking at you, because in a story about God's providence, there are no coincidences. Ruth didn't randomly stumble into that field. She was guided there. She just didn't know it yet. So who is Boaz? The Bible describes him as a man of great worth, wealthy, respected, honorable. And here's the detail that makes this whole thing click. He was a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech, which means he was family. Distant, maybe, but family. That morning, Boaz came out to check on his workers, and the first thing he said to them was, "The Lord be with you." And they responded, "The Lord bless you." This wasn't just a formality. This was a man who actually walked with God, who built an atmosphere of faith in his workplace. In a time when corruption and wickedness were everywhere, remember, this was the era of the judges, when everyone did what was right in their own eyes, Boaz was different. And then he noticed her. He asked his foreman, "Who's that young woman?" And the foreman told him everything. She's Moabite, she came back with Naomi, she asked politely to glean, she's been working since early this morning and hasn't stopped except for a short break. Boaz walked straight over to her, and what he said next absolutely floors me every time. He didn't ask her to leave. He didn't treat her like an outsider. He said, "Listen to me, my daughter. Don't go gleaning in anyone else's field. Stay here. Follow my workers. I've already told the men not to bother you, and when you're thirsty, help yourself to our water." In that time, foreign women working in fields were vulnerable. They had no protection. They could be harassed, threatened, taken advantage of. The fact that Boaz went out of his way to say, "Nobody touches her, nobody messes with her, she's under my protection," that's not just kindness. That's a man with character. That's a man who sees people when the rest of the world sees outsiders. She fell to the ground in shock. "Why are you being so kind to me? I'm a foreigner. You don't even know me." And Boaz said, "Oh, but I do know you. I've heard everything. I know how you left your family and your homeland to come with Naomi after she lost everything. I know about your loyalty. I know about your courage. What you've done, that's not ordinary. That's faith. And may God reward you for it, because you've come to take refuge under His wings." She came looking for leftover grain, and she found a man who saw her true worth. At lunchtime, Boaz called her over to eat with his workers, not behind them, not after them, with them. He served her himself. He made sure she had more than enough. And when she went back to work, he quietly told his workers, "Leave extra grain on purpose. Let her find it. Don't embarrass her. Just make sure she goes home with plenty." That evening, Ruth came home with about 30 pounds of barley. That's not normal for a gleaner. That's not even close to normal. Naomi's eyes went wide. "Where did you work today? Whoever's field that was, God bless him." Ruth said, "His name is Boaz." Naomi went still. "Boaz, the Lord has not forgotten us. That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers." Now that phrase, guardian redeemer, is going to become the most important phrase in this whole story. So let me explain it. In ancient Israel, there was a role called the Goel, the kinsman redeemer. If a man died and left his family in poverty, a close male relative had the right and the duty to step in, buy back the family land, protect the widow, and in some cases, marry the widow to continue the dead man's family name. It was God's way of making sure families didn't just disappear into poverty and obscurity. Boaz was that relative for Naomi and Ruth. And suddenly, what looked like a random Tuesday in a random field was actually God quietly setting up the next chapter.
Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss our next Bible story. And if you did like access to the character prompts that keep every scene and character consistent, simply scan the QR code or check the link in the description. Now, let's get back to our story, because the best is reserved for last.
The harvest season ended after about 7 weeks. Ruth had worked faithfully every single day, and now Naomi, who had been watching everything unfold with new eyes that were starting to see God's hand again after so long, came to Ruth with a plan. She said, "Ruth, I need to find you a home, a real home, and I think God has been setting something up this whole time. Tonight, Boaz is going to be at the threshing floor separating the grain. I want you to wash up, put on your best clothes, put on some perfume, basically look your best. Go down there after he's eaten, find where he lies down to sleep, uncover his feet and lie down there. He'll know what to do." Okay, I know this sounds really strange to us, but hear me out, because in that culture, this was actually a formal way for a woman to propose. Uncovering a man's feet and lying at them was a symbolic request. It was her saying, "I'm asking you to be my covering, my protector, my husband." It was vulnerable, it was bold, and it was completely proper for that time. Ruth didn't hesitate. She said, "Whatever you say, I'll do it." And she went. She waited in the darkness at the edge of the threshing floor while Boaz ate and celebrated with his workers. She watched him lie down beside the pile of grain to guard it through the night. She waited until he was deeply asleep, and then, quietly, carefully, she uncovered his feet and lay down. Can you imagine the courage that took? She was putting herself in an incredibly vulnerable position. She was risking rejection. She was risking public humiliation. She was a foreign widow with nothing, and she was going to this wealthy, respected man in the middle of the night and essentially saying, "I'm asking for your name." In the dark of the night, something woke Boaz up. He reached down and felt someone lying at his feet. His heart probably jumped. Who are you?" And Ruth answered in the darkness, simply and powerfully, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread the quarter of your garment over me. You are my guardian redeemer." In that moment, those words, "Spread your garment over me," echoed back to something Boaz himself had prayed over her earlier. When he first met her in the field, he had said, "May God reward you because you've come to shelter under his wings." And now she was asking him to be the expression of those wings, to be the hands and feet of God's protection in her life. Boaz responded with grace. He said, "God bless you, my daughter. This, what you're doing right now, is an even greater act of kindness than everything you did for Naomi. You could have chased after any young man, rich or poor, but you didn't. You're a woman of noble character. Everybody in this town knows it. Don't be afraid. I will do what you're asking." But then, and here's the complication, he said there was a problem. "There is someone more closely related to your family than I am. He has the first right to be your guardian redeemer. I can't just skip over him. I have to do this properly by the law. But I promise you, if he won't do it, then I will. I swear it before God." He sent her home before dawn with 6 large measures of barley because he said, "I don't want you going back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." When Ruth got home and told Naomi everything, Naomi smiled for maybe the first time in years. She said, "Wait, my daughter, just wait. That man will not rest until this is settled today." That morning, Boaz went to the city gate. In the ancient world, the gate was basically the courthouse, the town square, and the signing table all in one. It was where legal matters were settled, where witnesses gathered, where agreements were made official. He sat down and waited, and before long, the other relative came walking through, the man who had the first right to redeem Naomi's family property. Boaz called to him, "Hey, come sit with me." He gathered 10 elders of the city to serve as witnesses because this was going to be a legal transaction, and laid it all out. "You know the land that belonged to Elimelech, Naomi's late husband. She's back and needs to sell it. As the closest relative, you have the first right to buy it back. Do you want it?" The man's eyes lit up. "Yes, I'll redeem it." But then Boaz said slowly and clearly, "There's something else. On the day you buy that land, you also take on the responsibility of Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow. You marry her, you provide for her, and any children you have with her will carry her first husband's name, not yours." The man's face changed. He said, and you can hear the calculating in his voice, "I cannot redeem it because it would put my own estate at risk." He wanted the land. He didn't want the people that came with it. He wanted the asset, not the responsibility. And so, according to the ancient custom, he pulled off his sandal and handed it to Boaz. That was the legal sign. The transfer was complete. The right of redemption passed from him to Boaz. And in front of all 10 elders and everyone gathered at the gate, Boaz stood up and declared, "Today you are all witnesses. I have purchased the land and property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon, and I have taken Ruth the Moabite as my wife to carry on the name of her late husband, to make sure that name is never forgotten." The people erupted. The elders blessed them. "May God make this woman in your home like Rachel and Leah, who built the whole house of Israel. May you be famous in Bethlehem. May your family be like the family of Perez." They didn't know, they couldn't know just how literally that blessing was about to come true. And so Boaz and Ruth were married. Ruth, who had been a widow with nothing, was now a bride. Ruth, who had left everything in Moab, now had a home. Ruth, who had been an outsider, was now family. And God, who had been working quietly behind every single scene of this story, did one more thing. He opened Ruth's womb, and she gave birth to a son. The women of Bethlehem gathered around Naomi, the woman who had called herself empty, the woman who had called herself bitter, the woman who had told God, "Your hand is against me," and they said, "Praise God, He has not left you without a guardian redeemer. This baby is going to renew your life. He's going to take care of you in your old age. And do you know what? Your daughter-in-law, the one who loves you, she has given birth to him, and she is worth more to you than 7 sons." 7 sons. In that culture, 7 sons was basically the greatest blessing a woman could receive, and they said Ruth was worth more than that. Naomi took that little baby in her arms, her grandson really, the child of the daughter who chose her, and held him close to her chest. The woman who came back empty was full again. The boy's name was Obed. And here's where it gets bigger than just one family's happy ending. The book of Ruth closes with a genealogy, a list of names. And at first it seems like a strange way to end such a beautiful story with a bunch of names you can barely pronounce. But stick with me, because this genealogy is the whole point. It goes like this. Boaz was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David. King David, the greatest king in Israel's history, the warrior poet, the man after God's own heart, the one who wrote the Psalms, the one who unified Israel. That David came directly from Ruth, a foreign woman, a widow, an outsider from Moab, the one nobody would have expected to be in the story at all. But that's still not the end, because if you open the New Testament and flip to the very first chapter of Matthew, the family tree of Jesus Christ, you'll find Ruth's name right there in verse 5. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Ruth, the loyal Moabite, the woman who made a covenant out of love and walked away from everything safe and familiar. She is listed in the bloodline of Jesus himself. Let that sink in for just a second. She had no idea. She just knew she loved Naomi and couldn't leave her. She just knew she wanted to follow Naomi's God, this God she'd only heard about through her husband and his family. She just knew she'd rather face an uncertain future with integrity than a comfortable future without it. And God took that small, faithful choice and wove it into the most important story ever told. What is Ruth's story saying to you? So what does all of this mean for us, sitting here thousands of years later? I think Ruth's story is saying at least 4 really important things. First, your small choices matter more than you know. Ruth had no idea what she was doing. She wasn't thinking, I'm going to be the great-grandmother of King David and an ancestor of Jesus. She was just thinking, I love this woman. I can't leave her alone. The small, quiet choice to stay, to be loyal, to show up, that's what God uses. You never know which conversation, which act of kindness, which moment of faithfulness is the one that God is going to use to change someone's life forever, maybe even your own. Second, God has no outsiders. Ruth was a Moabite. She came from a people who had history with Israel. She had no legal right to be there. She was an outsider in every possible sense. And yet God chose her, wrote her into His story, welcomed her under His wings. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, like you're too far gone, too different, too broken, too much of an outsider for God to use, Ruth is your answer. There are no outsiders in God's family, only people who haven't yet come home. Third, faithfulness will be seen. Ruth didn't go around advertising what she did for Naomi. She just did it. She got up every morning, she worked, she was loyal, she was kind, and somehow, before she ever even met Boaz, he already knew her reputation. I've been told everything you've done. Your character is speaking, even when you're not in the room. Fourth, God is always working even when you feel empty. Naomi came home calling herself bitter. She thought God had forgotten her. She felt empty. But looking back at the story, we can see that God was at work in every single scene, every step she couldn't see, every door that opened, every coincidence that wasn't a coincidence at all. If you're in a season of feeling like Naomi right now, empty, bitter, wondering if God even notices you, He does. He is working in the scenes you cannot see. He is setting up your Boaz. He is timing your harvest. He is writing your next chapter even while you're still crying over the last one. Ruth was just a girl from Moab, a widow, a nobody by the world's standards. She made one faithful choice, one, and God did the rest. He redeemed her. He restored Naomi. He gave them both more than they had dared to hope for. And through their story, He quietly moved history forward toward the greatest redemption of all time. Maybe you're at your own crossroads today. Maybe, like Ruth, you're choosing between what's easy and what's faithful. Maybe, like Naomi, you're calling yourself empty and wondering if this is just how life ends for you. Maybe, like Boaz, you're in a position to show extraordinary kindness to someone who desperately needs it, and you've been hesitating. Ruth's story is your permission to stay, to love, to serve, to work, to trust. Because the God who guided Ruth's feet to the right field is the same God who is with you today, and He wastes nothing, not your pain, not your grief, not your loss, not your story. He is a redeemer, and redemption is exactly what He does best. If this story moved you, if it encouraged you, if it gave you hope, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Every time you share a video like this, you might be handing someone else the exact story they needed to hear today. So share it. Send it to someone who needs a reminder that God hasn't forgotten them. We tell ancient stories because they carry modern truths, and these truths, they save lives. Next story preview. Next time, we're going to uncover the story of a woman whose beauty caught the eye of a king and whose life became entangled in one of the most shocking scandals in the entire Bible. That's right, we're telling the story of Bathsheba. And trust me, it's not the simple story you may think you know. The real story of Bathsheba is one of power, betrayal, loss, and redemption. A story that exposes the dangerous consequences of desire, the weight of hidden sin, and how God can still bring purpose out of brokenness. Because at its core, Bathsheba's story isn't just about a king's mistake. It's about a woman caught in the middle of choices that changed the course of history forever. You do not want to miss it. I'll see you in the next one.